Okay, so now that we've talked about how to like envision or how to kind of like make this Maclaurin Series on paper, we need to make this in code. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Sublime Text, which is my preferred text editor. And then actually let's open up this file. My file. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is I have a folder called Maclaurin Series Simulation, so I've done this before. I just want to show you a quick preview of like what this application is going to look like. So you guys can get inspired, understand a little bit more about what this whole project is about. And then I'm going to delete the simulation so we can do the simulation together, step by step, line by line. So here you can see the simulation going. Looks pretty cool. So take note, these restart button, Maclaurin series number, this nav bar, and just the simulation itself. Okay, so that's what I'm going to show you with the simulation. So the first thing the first thing I need to do is I'm going to delete all these files so we start out from scratch. So delete. Okay, so the only thing here is just a picture. So now if we come back to this, it should just be gone. Okay, exactly, that's what we want. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna make a new file and save it as let's put it in Maclaurin Series Simulation. Okay, we're gonna save it as let's save it as simulating Sinx Maclaurin Series. No, let's just say simulating Maclaurin Series. Simulating Maclaurin Series HTML. Okay. So the first thing we're gonna have to do with this HTML is we're going to have to put obviously HTML code in it. A library that I like to use a lot is Materialize. So just type in materialize.css.com. We'll go to their website, grab some code, getting started code, which is usually the template for all my programs, because I'm not really although I know a lot of HTML and CSS, I don't really want to spend time making everything look nice, so I use this library just to make everything a little bit easier for myself. So we're going to go to the Getting Started tab once this loads. Okay. Getting started. Okay. It's still loading. And then we're going to scroll down. Scroll down all the way down to HTML setup. So I'm just going to grab all this code, copy and paste it right into there. Okay, so now that we have this, now we have a nice a startup. The only thing that's wrong with this file is these are local files. We don't have these local files, so we're going to have to get the CDN of this file. So if we come back up, we'll just see that they have the compiled and minified CSS right here. So we're just going to copy this, Control C, and then Control V. Oh, right there. Okay, so we can see that this is not a local file, and the same with the JavaScript. We're going to do the same with the JavaScript. I'm just going to grab, hopefully, okay, didn't grab. I'm going to grab everything and switch out this JavaScript. Control V, close that tag off. Okay, so now we have so now this is the right way. This is the way I want it. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to put the nav bar that I showed you in the sneak peek of the simulation. So we go to navbar.html on this website. Okay, so Materialize has these really cool nav bars that are already all set up for us that we can just copy and paste the code. Not much energy required, and that's what we want because this is not a major part of our project. This is just a peripheral that makes the major part look a little bit better. So let's just put this nav bar right under the body tag. Control V. I'm going to indent this so that it looks the right way in my eyes. Tab. Okay. So the next thing we're gonna do is first we only need 2 li tags, so we're just gonna delete this. Undo. We're gonna delete the first one. So let's delete the first one. Next, we're going to call this Maclaurin series number. We're just going to default that at 1, and we're going to use JavaScript. So let's just say ID equal end series. We're going to use JavaScript using this ID to grab it, document.getElementById, to change it dynamically. Additionally, later we're going to have a tab that's called restart simulation, and this is going to run an on-click event, which we're going to set later. So let's just call it on-click equal restart simulation. Easy as that. So the next thing we have to do is let's just run this. So Control S, and we go into this folder. It's right here. Open with Google Chrome. Just gonna close that. Okay. Okay, so now we have a nice nav bar. The only thing is I want to put 20, like up some margin right there, so it's not right up against that. And let's call this like something that actually makes sense. So let's call it simulation of Sin X Maclaurin series. Simulation of Sin X Maclaurin series. Let's give it style equal margin left 20px. Perfect. So we save that, we run it. Perfect. So that looks nice. So the next thing we have to do is we have to have supporting JavaScript files so that we can dynamically change a certain area of this website or application so it simulates the Maclaurin series. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create 2 JavaScript files. Excuse me. The first one we're going to create is going to be called Maclaurin series simulation. So this JavaScript file is going to hold the specific simulation, and then actually let's link it in here before we save it. It'll make it a little bit easier. So script src equal Maclaurin series simulation.js. There. Oh. And then we're gonna do another script file, src equal Maclaurin series objects.js. So this file is gonna be a supporting file for our other file, for our other JavaScript file called Maclaurin series simulation. So we're just going to put that in there .js. Okay, so now we have 2 files that are supporting this. Lastly, we need one more specific file, and we're going to create this simulation in P5js. P5js is a really cool JavaScript file to create 2D animations, and I highly recommend learning a little bit more about it, more than we're going to go through in this tutorial. So I'm just going to type in cdn P5js. So once you type in cdn P5js, just open up this link right here. So like I said before, P5js is a really good library when you're trying to simulate like different things. So here you can see the P5js and P5min.js. We're going to use the minified version because this is not that big of a project. It doesn't use the whole library, so there's no reason to put to link the whole library into this project. So we're just going to say script type equal text slash JavaScript src equals, and then we just copy what the thing copied for us. Then now that we have this library pasted into our project, we can start coding this simulation. So the first thing I want to do is I just want to do a quick small little tutorial on P5js. Not really a tutorial, just a small little mini lesson. So the first thing you're going to do when you're creating a P5js, it's called a sketch, is you have to have a function set up, and you have to have a function draw. So this function setup sets up the environment that you're going to draw this simulation in. So the first thing we have to do is we have to designate a spot where we're going to draw the simulation. So I'm just going to say div id equal graph container, because we're like creating a graph and then making an animation inside that graph in a sense. So once we have that, we can come over here and we have to create a canvas. So I'm just going to call it var my canvas. And we say my canvas equals create canvas. Let's just do 400, 400, and then let's have a background of 0, 0, 0, and let's just put a circle at 0, 0 with a circle. The ellipse takes in, this ellipse function takes in 4 values, x and y, and then a width and a height. So let's just have the width be 50 and the height be 50. So if we save that, how will this draw this ellipse on a black background? Because this is RGB value 0, 0, 0. So if we come over here, so here we can see that it made a simulate, like a place to draw animations that's 400 by 400, and it drawed an ellipse at 0, 0 with a width of 50 and a height of 50. So apparently 0, 0 is in the left and right top left corner. As a programmer, you should know this, but if you're a really big beginner, yeah, 0, 0 actually starts at the top left, and to increase your x, you move right, and to increase your y, you actually move downwards. So this is kind of a little bit inverse of a normal graph. So we're gonna have to change this with our code. So the first thing we're gonna do is first move 0, 0 from the top left to the exact middle, so that it's a little bit more intuitive for for the user watching a simulation, that 0, 0 is the middle of the canvas, not the top left. So there's a cool function in P5js called translate. So if you just do we can put it under here. So you translate. So you type in width divided by 2, which is a global variable which knows the width of your canvas. So width divided by 2, height divided by 2. So as any translation you've learned in geometry or pre-algebra, translation moves a certain point from here to another point. So we're moving 0, 0 from 0, 0 to actually width divided by 2, height divided by 2, which should center it. Okay, perfect. So now 0, 0 is in the middle of our canvas. The next thing we want to do so that our user gets a full experience is we're going to actually make the width of the canvas the screen width, and the height of the canvas your screen height, so that the user gets a fuller experience. The animation covers the whole page rather than just 400 pixels by 400 pixels. Perfect. So now we have that. The next thing we need to do is draw lines for our x-axis and y-axis. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to use the line function, which takes an x1 and a y1 and an x2 and a y2. So the first point, we're going to draw a point from here, a line from here to here, from the top of the screen all the way to the bottom of the screen. So that would be the x value for that would be 0, and the y would be negative height divided by 2, comma 0 height divided by 2. We know this is the y-axis because because the x is 0. These are the x's. Y when you're on the y-axis, x is always 0, and so we're gonna do negative width divided by 2, comma 0, comma width divided by 2, comma 0, comma 0. And we know that this is the x-axis because the y values for this function. Remember that this is x1, y1, x2, y2 are 0. So next thing we're gonna do is we're just gonna give this function a stroke. So let's just say that a stroke is pretty much a color for a specific line or border, and this is considered a line in P5js or border. So we're just gonna give this 255, 255, 255. So the way you shorthand this, if all your values are equal, r is equal to g, which is equal to b, you can actually just write one value, and the function will assume that all the colors are the same. So the same we can do here. So we're just gonna do that. Come over here. We refresh. We have our x-axis and our y-axis. Perfect. Next thing we need to do is we need to start creating our object that will actually one thing before that. So let's draw our ellipse now. So we have an ellipse at 0, 0. Actually, let's do it at 10, 10. With a width of 5 and a height of 5. So if we save that and we come back here, wait a minute. Why is 5? We said 5, x of 5, and y of 5. Well, if you remember what I said before, when you're doing when you're talking about the y position on a computer, y increases as you move downwards, which is the opposite of a graph. So we're gonna have to use a function called scale, which scales the environment that you're programming in. So the x-axis is fine, but the y-axis is inverse. So we're gonna invert it by what did I just do? We're gonna invert it by making this -1, the y value -1. So now if we invert it, now it looks like a graph. This is 5. This is 10, 10. That's proper. That's right. Okay. So now that we have that, we've created our graph. Now we have to oh, I forgot a really major key. So we have to tell this graph where to go. So when you don't tell the graph where to go, it'll just assume and it'll create its own div, but that's not really good practice. So I actually forgot this. That was my mistake. So dot parent. So we just wanted to tell it to go to the graph container. So we won't see that much of a difference between this code and the next code, but just remember that this is pushing this animation into this div, so it matters. Okay, so we have that. So the next thing we need to do is we need to start creating the equation object and the data point object that we talked earlier in this tutorial. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create the equation object, so function equation. As we talked about, equation will have an x min, an x max, number of data points. It will have a travel speed. Okay. So the first equation, actually, the properties we're gonna have in this equation, the equation should have a this.step, which equals x max minus x min divided by number of data points. So the step is how far each dot. So we're gonna have a bunch of dots in this equation, and the step is how far each dot is from each other. And this matters because each dot needs to be a certain distance from each other to create continuity, or if that makes sense.